I have to say, in all my career, everything I've achieved and all the goals that I have, my team I have today and who they are and how they work and what they've individually achieved, and the fact that they've been with me for so long, some of them 8 years in the trenches by my side, believing in my crazy vision, is my proudest career accomplishment and my greatest flex and what I'm most proud of. They're incredible individuals, and there's something incredibly satisfying about training somebody up, empowering them, watching them grow, seeing them evolve, seeing them make more money, engage, get married, have babies, and buy property, all because of you've been able to provide them a home and a trajectory and a growth plan. The team and the people are the hardest part of any business. Everybody says that, but I think it's the most satisfying.
Welcome to Inside Aesthetics, the world's most listened to podcast for injectors and aesthetic businesses. I'm Dr. Jake Sloan, a facial aesthetic doctor, trainer and speaker with over 17 years experience.
And I'm David Siegel, an aesthetic entrepreneur and business mentor in our industry for over 2 decades. IA is a podcast aimed at educating aesthetic practitioners from around the world. The information contained within our episodes is general in nature and should not be used by the general public to make health or treatment decisions. You should seek the advice of a qualified healthcare professional in your country and have a bespoke consultation.
For our latest news, you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok, and you can also watch our full podcast episodes now on YouTube and Spotify. For all of our links, click down below in the show notes. And now let's get into the episode.
Hey guys, welcome to chapter 19 of the Business of Injecting, and today we're joined by Amy Wright, super successful registered nurse from Victoria here in Australia. So we're going to find out all about her business, her journey. She's come from the chain clinic world, did that for a little while, then moved into her own practice and has built an amazing business. And we're going to talk about that today. So these are your favorites, Jake. I know you love the business.
I love it.
stuff.
I can kick back. I can just relax. And I know that you and Amy have been doing some mentoring, coaching, supporting, whatever you guys do.
Yeah, she did. Well, she actually did some great content for our Patreon community.
Yes.
So Amy spoke about her consultation process, and we'll get more into that because she has built a business that's actually not that reliant on her from a income generating perspective. So it's going to be really good to find out how she scaled that business and actually used the consultation process to standardize what's going on and making sure things aren't getting missed.
Yeah. And I guess to remind our listeners, if you're new to the podcast, these Business of Injecting episodes are really about looking at how people did it, how they became successful. Of course, no one is perfect, and we might talk about some trials and tribulations as well. But, just to sort of work out how infrastructure and businesses are created and thrive.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in that, there's 18 of these previously.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Amy, well, let's start off by you telling us a little bit about yourself, your background. Tell us the Amy Wright story.
Can't believe I'm here, guys. This has been on my vision board for 2 years, I reckon. Hi, Mum. Here I am.
Mood board.
Yeah. Manifest, guys. You can make it happen. Here I am. It started actually even earlier than the laser clinic chain days, actually, because I started injecting in 2011 or 12, but I didn't hit LCA until I needed to when I moved back to Melbourne. But before that, I got to work in clinics in Perth where I did my traineeship in 2012, I think it was. That's when my formal training started, and I did I call it a baptism of fire traineeship, where it was like, here's an hour of training and here's a list of patients and here's 15 minutes to do each of them. Do your best. So that was where it started. And funnily enough, that clinic owner did a Groupon back then for toxins. So if that's any indication of how long ago and the state of affairs of the industry when I started, but bounced around from Perth, Sydney, Melbourne, Queensland, Brisbane, lived and worked all through my 20s all around Australia in different clinics, which I think was formative because I got to work in clinics that were really, really high end, where it was really fancy, and there was $1,000 deposit just to book in, whether you were having a lip flip or a liquid makeover, as we used to call it. And then I've worked in clinics where, super lower socioeconomic demographic. We had bars on the windows. We had to chain the dumpster to the fence because people kept stealing it to sleep in it. So I've worked in all of the spectrums of the clinics, and then obviously the chain model as well, a few of the chain models. I think I'm banned from quite a few of the chain models now, and I can't keep my mouth shut, but it was really formative in that sense because I got to see how, private boutique clinics did things, how the big chain models with the really solid business models from sort of corporate did it. And I sort of got to, as I went along, cherry pick. I was like, oh, that's really good. Clients love that. Or, this feels really good. I feel really empowered by my boss when I get to do this, or I hate doing that. I really resent this part of it, or clients really don't react well to this. And I sort of was like unknowingly collecting all of the best of the elements of the clinics I got to work in, um, all the way through to eventually just going out on my own. Same story as all the other nurses, got enough skill behind me, and I thought it's time to do this by myself, my way. And that's kind of what pushed me to do it by myself. Is I don't want to work under somebody else's model. I know enough about what clients respond really well to and what they need. And if I just got a chance to do it myself without somebody looking over my shoulder and, push me to do things I don't want to do, or in a way I don't want to do them, I reckon I could make these clients really happy. And that's what I built my whole business on, is just focusing on the person on the bed in front of you and just making them really happy. So yeah, all the way through to having my own clinic, my own team of 12, I think, or 13.
So the chain clinic model, I've got a love-hate relationship with it because I was a big part of it for such a long period of time, and I can see how much of a great business model it was. I think they've kind of lost their way a little bit, but like retrospectively, what do you think about that? Because I guess the criticism is, you're doing high volume, you sort of, it's kind of like, inverted commas, like sausage factory kind of feel potentially, when you sort of, people on the bed, 15-minute appointments, bang, bang, bang.
Bit of a conveyor belt.
Yeah, but the other side of that is, you're sitting within a system, there's processes, you get to see lots and lots of patients within a really short space of time, and that helps build up your skill quickly. What's your view now, looking back on it, in terms of, is it good, is it bad? What do you think? If you had a magic wand to try and improve what the chain clinics do, what do you think?
It's the best place to cut your teeth. Like we say that I also teach at the AACDS, doing the practical workshops for the students that do the postgrad at the actual TAFE, and they all say, where do I start? Where can I get a gig? And I'm like, well, I'm not hiring you because it's really a big deal to take on an injector. But, I always recommend starting at the chain clinics, because it is the best place to get that hands-on experience, high volume. Your books are going to be full because of their marketing and what they've done to fill your columns, which is a real blessing and a bit of a privilege, as you'll find out as you get to inject solo. Where those clients come from and how those columns get full is half the battle. So, that's a gift in itself. You do get exposed to a wide variety of people, different types of clients, and different their different backgrounds and their sort of different ways of viewing the treatments that you're giving them. So you learn to sort of be a chameleon and consult different people and different ways of explaining what you're doing. And I think that was really formative to me as well. And you haven't got long, right? So you've got to learn to not convince them, but convey the way treatments work and if it's safe for them or not, or, in a really short space of time. So there's a lot of really valuable skills you can cleave from working there. I do think, and as a business person, now that I'm way out of it and I'm a business owner, it's a bloody great model in terms of like the systemized, and then we get back in the day it was Skype, and there was a whole host of doctors on Skype, and you'd call them and you'd have your little system and do your best not to run late, all day. So there's a lot to be said about, you guys and Bob Ack and everybody did to solidify that process was outstanding. Like if you look at it from a commerce point of view, it's commendable. I first started working in those original clinics, I never treated anybody under the age of 40. It really was for the rich and famous, and it was very, very regenerative sort of treatments. Whereas I think what kind of launched my career, and I was really lucky, is that I'd had experience when Instagram happened, and you guys were talking about it in the episode about, I think it was in 2016 when the big lip thing happened, and Lips to Laugh. The Kardashians happened at the same time as Instagram happened, at the same time as we were allowed to post before and afters, we were allowed to talk about the treatments we were doing. And I sort of entered the industry, went into my own business at that point from the chain model, already experienced, hit the ground running, and able to do these bloody lip treatments that everybody wanted. And it was a bit of a free kick, I think. It was a perfect storm, right place, right time. And I had the skill set for what all these young girls wanted. And I'd never seen so many young girls in my life, because this stuff was meant for people originally back in the day. This was just, it wasn't beautification, it was restorative. It was healing those static lines, or trying to work on shadows and static lines, and as it was intended before maybe social media influencers and the Kardashians and Instagram took it into this realm of beautification and very different. You can certainly appreciate what laser clinics did and all the chain clinics did in terms of making it commercially visible and making it accessible and not a scary, faraway thing that only the rich and famous or not everyday people could have access to. So they definitely commercialized it in that sense. And love it or hate it, every injector has to thank them for that, because otherwise it wouldn't be so well known. It wouldn't be such a accessible, publicly known thing.
I guess one thing that we're going to get onto is that working for a chain, you don't have to worry about the business side of things. You're just cutting your teeth, injecting, seeing patients, building your clinical skill. But, like you said, you sort of maybe saw what was going on around you and maybe took what you did and didn't like. But at least as a new injector, you don't have to think about that stuff. And I think that's really important to also acknowledge that that's a huge plus of the chains.
Even to this day, I think I look at some of my employees and contractors in my business and I think, God, how lovely to swan in. The cupboard's full. They don't know how the stock got there. They don't have to worry about the invoice to pay it. The doctor's ready to go. The clients are booked and confirmed. Most of the marketing's done for them. It's and then they swan off at the end of the day, see you later, and send me an invoice, and I'm like, God, I think that's the life. I think I'm
Those
getting
are
it
the
wrong.
days.
I think there's a real beauty in being an employee and a contractor, and what a lovely, gentle way to start, working in a chain clinic like that. All of that stuff's taken care of for you. So yeah, for sure.
Okay, so you left the chain clinic model, and then I think from what you've said, you're always destined to do something on your own at some point. So talk to us about the process of actually embarking on wanting to have your own business, and what were the steps involved in terms of getting it started, the concept, the funding, all that kind of stuff.
Truth be told, I had a bit of a falling out with the one of the owners of the clinics that I was working at the time, who I've since been in touch with, and no burnt bridges there, but just it got to the point where I was like, if I don't make a little business myself and set myself up in my own little place, I'm going to be working for somebody for the rest of my life, doing it under their model. And it was like sink or swim. And it was like, what do we call it? The gift of desperation. It was like, you have to make this work. So I found a little place that I was looking at, signed a lease for, I think, 2 years of rent, which was like 20 or 30 grand a year rent, which seemed huge at the time. It was really cute. And I just thought, at the time, I'd just got separated from my then partner. I'd driven back from Sydney. I'd, spent a year sort of trying to reestablish myself in the clinics in Melbourne. And I thought, what's the worst thing that can happen if I shoot my shot with this little practice? The worst thing will be I'll be, 20, 30K down. I'll be broken living with my parents. And I'm like, but I'm already broken living with my parents. So I'll be back where I started. So I really have nothing to lose and just, nothing but experience and knowledge to gain from it, I guess. So I just went for it. And I always say to people when they're thinking about taking that step, that plunge with their own business or branching out or some sort of venture, if the absolute worst outcome, if this fails miserably, is not that bad, you owe it to yourself to have a crack. It's the Aussie way, having a crack. And if you're not going to be homeless on the street and your family's going to be starving, then, give something a go. Don't be afraid. And thankfully, I had a soft place to land. My parents, ripe old age of 30, I was back at my parents' house after a failed relationship and moving back to Melbourne from Sydney. But yeah, that sort of pushed me to give it a go and just think, got nothing to lose. We've always got imposter syndrome, thinking, do I know enough to go out on my own? What if something goes wrong? Who am I going to call? I'm solo, injected by myself in a little practice with, of course, my prescribers. And then I thought, well, in some of the chain models, you're kind of solo in a sense there too, because you haven't got a doctor in the next room. You don't have another registered nurse in the next room, much less a senior one who'd mentor you or necessarily has a lot more technical skill or adverse event management skills than you. And so I thought, the risks are somewhat similar. So who am I not to take a punt?
Did you have an idea of, maybe not at the very start, but did you have a vision one day of what it would look like, what it would feel like, what team you wanted to develop, or did that come a lot later?
It's unfolded as I went along, because my goal was to just not go broke. Like I was like, if I can just not declare bankruptcy for a second time in my young life at the time, that's a win. I just I worked out with a dear friend of mine, we worked out all I had to do in a week to pay my rent and sort of break even was a glabella, 2 glabellas and a set of lips. If I could just do a mil of lip filler and 2 glabellas, I'd pay my rent. Eating spaghetti out of a can would be an additional lip flip. Maybe, food came on top of that. But and I was like, you know what, that's really manageable. For the people who may find me from the other clinics, I reckon I could manage that. So the goal was to just have, I had 2 or 3 bookings a day, or one at 9 a.m. and one at 8 p.m. And one of them was a review and one no-showed. And I was like, great, I'm killing it. But as long as I had my lip and my 2 glabellas, I knew I could survive, and it grew from there. And that's why, I never, to answer your question, thought that I'd have a big thriving team. I didn't even want an admin. I didn't want another nurse to be responsible for. I didn't want to worry about what they were doing in the other room with the door closed that I might be accountable for, or how they were going about their way with the clients. And I didn't have the understanding at the time that you can template the shit out of that and and protocol it and systemize it so that you can share your knowledge with somebody and have them replicate it behind a closed door where you feel safe that they're doing a great job. But at the time, I mean, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this, but I always say I couldn't manage a route in a brothel. I'm just not a manager. I'm just not. Sorry.
Yeah, that's
I just think
No, anything goes on
great.
IA.
Okay, but I just don't. I'm a nurse. I'm a worker bee. We're not born into leadership. I want to be a cog in a wheel. I want to be a sheep with a shepherd. We rock up and we do our nursing shift. You could be a nurse unit manager. I know. I'm not saying nurses aren't leaders, but it's just not built into us to sort of think strategically and think, who could I bring in and where are the gaps I could fill. None of that was language that I just wanted to get through the day basically and just have enough money to survive. But the team just grew really organically, and I have to say, in all my career, everything I've achieved and all the goals that I have, my team I have today and who they are and how they work and what they've individually achieved, and the fact that they've been with me for so long, some of them 8 years in the trenches by my side, believing in my crazy vision, is my proudest career accomplishment and my greatest flex, and what I'm most proud of, because they're incredible individuals, and there's something incredibly satisfying about training somebody up, empowering them, watching them grow, seeing them evolve, seeing them make more money, seeing them grow up, attend their conferences, get excited about being at the conference and take selfies and hashtag always learning. It's so cute. You've got to watch them go through their rites of passage and then get, engaged, get married, have babies and buy property, all because of you've been able to provide them a home and a trajectory and a growth plan that they've, I love it. I think that's the team and the people are the hardest part of any business. Everybody says that, but I think it's the most satisfying.
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt your podcast. Just a quick message about our Patreon and how you can support us as a podcast. So David, what is Patreon?
So Patreon is an on-demand subscription service that allows you to access our global community of practitioners, business owners, and essentially it's a place where you can come together, get positive support, advice. Whether you're a beginner or an experienced KOL, there is a place for everybody.
Yeah, so if you download the Patreon app, search for Inside Aesthetics, there are 2 main options to subscribe. You can become a free member where we can communicate with you, share our news, involve you in competitions, etc. Or you can become a full subscriber for 50 Australian dollars a month. And there you get access to the WhatsApp community where people are sharing and getting advice. But also within the Patreon app, David does a lot of business coaching and mentoring. So I think you've drilled down to various topics that have cropped up that have been communicated in our WhatsApp group.
I mean, just today we recorded some content. It's quite a nuanced space, and the challenges that business owners and practitioners come up against in this space is quite difficult to get advice on. So always happy to share my knowledge and all of my mistakes and lessons learned along the way.
And then I, of course, tackle injectable content. I often involve patients or talk about new products, anatomy, and all that good stuff. So if you like what we do, consider subscribing to our Patreon. Now let's get back into the podcast.
So let's just unpack a couple of things that you said. One in particular was initially you couldn't even imagine growing a team, being responsible for someone more than just yourself. And this is, I guess, a point of delineation where a lot of other people who are out there who have aspirations to have a business don't know how to take that next step or don't know when that right time is. So at what point, and maybe just tell us the years as well, because I think a lot of, and not to take anything away from what you've done at all, I think that starting a new business today is very different to starting a new business, say 10 years ago, 8 years ago, in terms of how difficult it is to get that traction, right? So I think we need to kind of put that out there. It's a different world now. But at what point did you decide that you wanted to grow this business, and how did you know it was the right time? And then what were the steps that you took to start bringing on more people and expanding the business?
I don't want to make it all sound accidental, but I did get really lucky with my first hire ever. I I had a young girl, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed little, I think she was 21. She was like just grad year, came in and I really want to work with you. I want to learn from you. And I was like, absolutely not. Piss off. You know, I can say it in this sort of podcast, and I hope I don't offend people, but generally speaking, controversial opinion, injectors are a bit of a breed, if you know what I'm trying to say. And you know, not every injector is a super down to earth person with a really sort of sensible, realistic, you know, sense of self and sense of, there's a lot of injectors I think who are really getting into it because they think it's glamorous and it's just, they're sort of in it for the wrong reasons. And I just didn't want to get around anybody else in my little space who was in it for any other reason other than being obsessed with the injecting and the craft. Because at the end of the day, from day one, when I started, I was just such a nerd for this injecting thing, um, I just think it's the coolest thing, the art meeting beauty and the science and the nerdy side of it, yet the aesthetic side of it. It's just I think it's magical. I won't hire anybody or train anybody or mentor anyone who doesn't think that. If they think I've seen it's lucrative, it looks pretty Gucci on Instagram, I'm not going to go out of my way to invite you into my world or share anything valuable with you. And it's something I say in job interviews. It's something I say at the start of training workshops. What makes you want to do this? And if it's anything other than because it's awesome and fascinating and amazing, I'm not interested. But this little girl rocked up on my clinic doorstep. I really want to learn from you. And I was like, absolutely not. So what she did was kept booking her mum in for consultations, and her poor mum, who, by the way, needed nothing. She's a gorgeous woman, no interest in injectable treatments. And she'd come in with her mum, and her mum would be having a consultation, and she's got her clipboard, and she's like taking notes like this and like trying to learn. She's like, Mum, ask about this thing here. And she's like, okay, what about this thing here then? And poor Vicky was just dragged through it. And I said, oh, fine. You can shadow me for free, but stay out of the way. Don't interact with my clients. They're paying clients. You can stand in the corner and don't speak unless spoken to. And I didn't want to impact the client experience by having her there, but she reminded me of me when I was trying to get my very first gig ever back in 2011. My first boss in Perth that gave me my first shot said the words to me, and I'll never forget. I either have to give you this job, this traineeship, or take out an intervention order on you. I'm not sure. I might as well just give you the traineeship because I wouldn't leave her alone. I really wanted it. And that's what Montana reminded me of myself. And I thought, oh, I'll give her a go. She just hung around, kept coming in every day, dressed really beautifully, presenting herself really well. She started to sneak out the back, wash the dishes, sneak off, answer the phone. She started to sort of secretly help in the background. And she started to sort of draw up for me. Like she would prepare my dressing pack for me and draw up she'd listen to my dosing and then get it ready for me and start to draw up my fillers and things like that after I'd chatted to the client. And bit by bit, I trained her. Fast forward, she's been with me for 8 years. She's one of my best friends. Her son is my godson. She's engaged. They bought a house and yeah, she's, thriving. So that was a really lucky, accidental, she came in and she was keen and she just was in the right place at the right time. And then from there, I just acquired these people. A lot of them were clients who I got to know really well, who I thought, you're a really fantastic person. I can imagine you being really great on the desk, talking to clients, and you're really passionate about it. So you'd be passionate to chat on the phone to people who've got questions and things like that, or to talk to somebody nicely in the waiting room who's really nervous. I just got a sense that they'd be a really good fit for that. So getting to know somebody being a client is a great way to hire somebody because you see the real stuff, like on paper, somebody can look great, but then it's Tuesday during the day and I'm like, aren't you working full time? I called in sick again. Who cares? Stuff my boss. And I'm like, oh, noted. I wouldn't like to be, employing you. So I did acquire quite a few of my team, injectors and admin, through just being clients or people that I'd worked in other clinics elsewhere, or somebody I'd worked at laser clinics with who even on tough days, I just really admired how she always dug deep and she was really professional and she just had this beautiful sense of decorum despite, potentially chaos going on around her. And I just remembered that and got in touch with her. And, one by one, I just acquired these incredible people. I've acquired the wrong people. I've, had to get, people out of the business over the years, or people have naturally deselected who aren't a fit. But to answer your question now, for the people who are at that precipice where they're like, I'm doing really well, I'm at capacity, it's a one-to-one type of service model. So if you're booked out, you're booked out. There's no extra scope, and when you are booked out, you can't work on the business, you can't answer emails, you can't do any revenue generating strategy, you can't do anything to evolve the business in any way. You're struggling to keep up with your bookkeeper, I dare say. So I say to people, what their biggest fear is with taking someone on is that they won't do it their way behind closed doors, or that they'll just cause problems. But I think if you can systemize what it is that you do well, that you value, for example, your consult, the way you speak, your dialogue, your approach, your really conservative way of approaching treatment planning, the way that you step a new person through what this world of injecting is, what adverse outcomes are, how we'd manage them if they happened, right through to the psychology of, closing your mouth and maintaining eye contact when someone's trying to share with you something that they really want you to know about their concerns, or, the psychology of sitting a bit lower, if they're on the bed, lower your stool because you don't want to be looking down at somebody when you're trying to consult them. It's, I'm here to serve you. I'm here for you. It's about you. So those little psychological things that I built into my consult process, teach the shit out of them, get them to practice on you, and then you can set them free in a room with doors closed and hand them on a silver platter your beloved, hard-earned clients that you've spent years building trust with. It's really scary, but you don't do it until you're convinced that they've taken on your way, and are doing it in a way that you're really, really comfortable with. And it's possible. It takes work, yes. To do everything I just said takes you off the needle, takes you off the patients, and you do have to put time into something that doesn't generate revenue straight away. But isn't that just any investment? I mean, that's what studying is. You're just studying away and racking up debt and not making money for a later goal, or, improvement down the track. So it's just short-term pain, long-term gain. You'll know when you meet somebody who's prepared to take on your way of doing things, and you'll vibe. You'll meet people who are like you in the way you want to go about, operating, and the type of injector and the type of person you are to fit your client cohort. And I would say just go for it, but just before you're looking to take on that new person, really dig deep and do some introspection on what it is that you do that's magical, different, special, what it is that your clients are like, oh, I'd never go anywhere else because of this or because of that. Or I love it when you say this, it makes me feel so safe. Or I love always seeing on Instagram how much training you're doing. Or, oh, I saw you went to another conference. I love that you're keeping on top of the developments. That's why I'd never go. Work out what it is that it takes for your client cohort to trust and choose you again and again. Bottle it, protocol it, put it into a process, refine it. Yes, it takes time. And then that's what you teach to your new person while on probation. And then you get them to see if they can do it back to you. And if they can, you've got a winning model, because you know what your clients want. One-on-one, you can tell what they respond to, what they don't like, what they react nicely to. And that's what you've got to bottle and then pour onto everybody that works with you.
Can I ask, Amy, obviously running a successful business now, you've got a big team and you're probably really experienced with people shadowing or saying, I'd love to work with you. But your first, obviously, shadowy, you just said it was free and they just sort of hung around and it kind of worked. But do you have a system for allowing people to shadow you now? Do you charge for it, or what's the deal? Because, understandably, people don't want to give away their knowledge for free and then someone sets up next door. But at the same time, you don't, it takes a while for someone to sort of pick up your way of doing things. So how do you formalize shadowing now? Because that's a common question that we get from, a WhatsApp group and stuff.
I've got a confidentiality agreement specifically for shadowing, and I've got a shadowing protocol, which I can put into the group also. Another reason to join Patreon, guys. I'll put those resources in there.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
I send it a lot, that resource, to fellow injectors, clinic owners, is the injecting shadowing protocol, because they're paying clients, first of all. Like, never mind me getting paid from my IP. The most important thing is to not mess with the experience of the client on the bed, because they're the reason we're here, right? So I've developed this protocol from years of, having somebody come in chewing gum with thongs on or open toe shoes. Like, you're a nurse, babe. What are you doing with open toe shoes on? I'm treating this client and she's having like a $700 or $800 or $900 treatment, and this shadowing person's my boyfriend and I are having a big fight about this. Oh my God. Like, no. So you've got to put things that you would never think you would have to say to somebody. You've got to put it all in plain English. So the confidentiality agreement, the shadowing protocol, in terms of like payment, I think I'd base that on what type of clients you've got booked on that day. Like when I do it myself now, I've been injecting for 15 years. So if you get to come in with me on one of my Tuesdays, I could be doing everything from like sculptor, radius, back-to-back anti-wrinkle, tear trough, temple filler, through to just basic anti-wrinkle, on label, off label, like upper face, lower face. Yeah, like you're going to see such a variety. So to me, that's a higher value, higher price point, I think, to shadow me on a day like that, or half day shadow me, versus a day where I've got back-to-back anti-wrinkle booked in. You'll still learn heaps and pick up little pearls along the way, but somebody who wants to shadow me for things like temple filler and tear trough are advanced injectors. So they've got the funds to invest in advanced training. So that's where that price point sort of sits. So versus somebody who's like brand new, or I've had like ICU nurses pay to shadow me for half a day and they're like, I just want to see what it's all about. I might hate it. I don't even know if I want to do the course yet or specialize in this. I just want to see what you do. And I remember one guy did that and he was like, thanks for that. This is crazy. I never want to do this. I don't want to. He's like, I saw where you put that cannula. I don't want to do that ever. I was like, so different people for different reasons. It's a little bit of a different price point, but I'd say a day of like full blown intellectual property can be between $1,000 and $1,500, or up to $2,000. If my shadowing days that I would do for for a fee come with like a start theory at the start and a theory at the end with some Q&A, because it's like you couldn't say it. They knew they're not allowed to say it at the time, but they're like, oh, why did you choose that dose for that brow tail? Because you just said before that you wouldn't do that, but then you did it. Or why did you choose that cannula gauge for that, but then you swapped a sharp needle? And, they get an opportunity at the end to ask those questions, which I think is really valuable. But yeah, so I would basically depends on what you're showing them and how much IP before and after they're going to get access to, is how I'd sort of price it. But value what you've learned. I mean, for me to do not that I do them all the time, it's probably 3 or 4 a month of tear trough, but that's an expensive skill to learn. I've done a lot of anatomy masterclasses and a lot of Sebastian Cotofana to get to the point where I even want to do treatments like that somewhat regularly. So yeah, value your IP, but definitely protect in confidentiality. Like I don't want, they might look over my shoulder at the booking software, while I'm in that room, and they're looking at my client private medical records. So you've got to think about the confidentiality act that we're preserving as well. So important to get those documents done.
What's your retention strategy
for team?
For the people that are working with, well, just, your team. I mean, because in my experience, when you find someone that's exceptional, at some point you reach a fork in the road where a couple of things might happen. They're going to get poached by someone else that's going to offer them more than what you are willing or able to offer them. Or they'll have an epiphany and realize, hey, I can do this for myself. Like I see how much money Amy's making. I see how much this business is growing, and why would I not want to go and do this for myself? And this is something I struggled with. I've had boutique clinics that I owned, and I was involved in chain clinic models as well. So, when you are like an owner of like a chain clinic model, you do have restrictions on what you can and can't offer. Like you're within a system that doesn't allow you the total freedom of being, a solo business owner. So what's your strategy for retaining great people so that they don't go? Because, right, yes, you can replace them, but they're, as you correctly pointed out, they're taking your IP with them. They potentially could come, they could potentially become your competition, and then you've got to rebuild that space that's been left within your business. So how do you hold on to them? What's your strategy?
I mean, it's a real fear, isn't it? And it's anything that you're dumping money, time, energy, and IP into that could potentially walk out the door is quite terrifying for people. And I think that is something that puts people off hiring people too. I just think if you make it so good, why would they leave? And I think if someone poaches, like it might not be a nice business thing, but I ruthlessly poach from other businesses, and I'm not sorry about it. And I'm such an ethical business person. It's the only thing that I do that's a bit controversial, because I think no one could offer my team anything that I don't know about and haven't already mitigated, given them, or otherwise. So if someone's poachable, they're not happy. They've tried to communicate it, something they're not happy about, and you've not listened, or you've not been able to meet them with it, or that you've never given them a portal or like an opportunity to share it with you, because you don't have an open channel of communication. So It's actually a massive question that you've asked. I'll dive into it and stop the rant if it's too come off on a bit of a tangent, but there's quite a few elements to this, and I do get asked quite a lot, so I think it's valuable for people. Make it so good they don't need to leave. Financially, the working conditions, the autonomy, the opportunities, the growth, the training. If you can't meet them in those things, be honest about it. And it might be that it isn't the right place for them to stay. But if they're committed to the vision and the purpose and what you're trying to do, the way you're trying to do it, and they just want to stick by you because it's just exciting and they like the way you do things, then they're probably going to naturally deselect it at some point anyway. I think one-on-one meetings are critical with your team, and the bigger the team is, the more time consuming this becomes. And that's why I only treat 1 day a week now, because the other hours in the week need to be taken up with the key important people in my business. Making a half an hour block out of time every week or every fortnight, or if it's monthly, it's an hour to sit down one-on-one, no distractions, my phone's away, and I just focus on them. And there's a template that I can send you on how to do a nice one-on-one. Everybody does it their own way. It's about them. It's not about tasks that they need to get to or questions that I want to ask them. It's a time to check in with them. How you feeling? We have a form that they fill in. Stress out of 10, sleep out of 10, confidence in consults out of 10. 4. What came up in a consult this week that made you squirm? Oh, a client was asking me about this. I'm like, great. Let me, from the back of this one-on-one, organize a training session right now on the thing that you just identified is a gap for you because it's hurt your confidence. That's what I'm here for. How would I know she needed that if I didn't do the one-on-one and she didn't get an opportunity to actually be asked that question and share honestly with me? There could be issues within the team. Thank God I don't have that problem now. But interpersonal issues with the team, it's a private, confidential space to share that with me so I can nip it in the bud before it rots the culture that we protect, because we're very protective of our culture. Training opportunities, progression, their goals. We do a lot of goal setting. I know exactly what every single one of my team want. I know where they want to go in life. I know what drives them. I know what they dream of. And if I can be a part of facilitating any part of that, then I'll do whatever I can to do that. And that's what I've always done. And it's what I wished someone did for me when I was, a younger injector or working for someone. And yeah, I think so. The one-on-ones and staying dialed in. So if somebody shared with me in a one-on-one, Amy, I really want more money, we'd look at look at what they're getting, look at their commission, look at their wage. And if it was, if they were asking for something that I just couldn't give, I'd explain why, show them the P&L if you have to. They know the break even of the business. I'm transparent about that with the whole team. Everybody's aware of the break even. Everybody's aware of the figures in my business. So if somebody says, Amy, I'd like to get, throwing it out there, if somebody said, Amy, I want $800,000 a year, I'd be like, amazing, so do I. But here's what we earn. Here's what cost of sales is. Explain to them what that is if they don't know. And here's what's feasible within this business. Now, if they're driven because they want that figure because they want to buy a Lamborghini, well, great. They're a big dreamer, and that's something that they can pursue with side hustles or marketing themselves or selling online resources or having some other revenue stream. But basically, to answer your question, I think it's about staying dialed in to what they really want and need. If somebody wanted better hours, talk to me about it. I can arrange it. I can find more hours for you, or I can, your hours don't suit your children and the drop off, or the drive and the traffic at those hours suck. Tell me. Let's look at the calendar. Let's move the schedule around. If you don't like the treatments you're offering, let's organize some training, or let's go in the booking system and see where we can just take you off certain things and maybe teach you some other skills. Like, you want more hours, you want less hours. Like, what can you, short of the clinic being a 2-minute walk from their house, there's not a lot I can't meet them in. And if you care enough and you've invested enough in them as people, why wouldn't you meet them? If you want to keep them, and I've kept some 8 years, I've got a team, I think there's 3 or 4 of them that are 6 years, 2 of them are 4 years. Like, these are long-term girls, because I want to keep them happy long-term because I love them. They're great at what they do and they make the business what it is. The business is the people. It's not just me. It's I couldn't be where I am without the whole crew. And I think you just have to listen to them and just really try and give them everything they need. The only reason why a nurse would leave my clinic and go open her own is for the same reason that I did it, because she wants to do things her way. And I give my team so much autonomy. But if there's elements of marketing or things that they just want their own name up in lights and they just want to have a crack at it themselves, all power to you. I'll connect you with the right people. I'll help you sort out your permits. I'll hook you up with, the reps or whatever and help them set up. And, you're a chapter. It's a privilege to be a chapter in somebody's career journey. You don't get to keep everyone forever.
When you use the word poach, I wonder if you're being self-critical, or I don't know if it's kind of a positive thing, but you're headhunting. You're looking for the best team for yourself. And I don't think anyone can criticize that. I don't know how you poach, but how do you advise business owners or clinic owners to sort of find that talent? Because like you said, we're all siloed. We're all doing our own thing most of the time. So how do you keep a track of what's going on around you?
A lot of the time when I'm meeting people at sort of conferences and events or even Instagram, I'm not a huge one to keep. I should keep across things more on Instagram, who's who and who's doing what. But you can just become aware of good operators, that are doing things sort of ethically and doing things your way. Or I'm lucky now that a lot of people send me DMs saying, "Oh my God, this and that," and I think, there's nothing you're doing wrong operationally or treatment wise, but you just need a home, or you just need some. The beauty of being in my team is that you've got a bunch of big sisters, like, so you're surrounded by mentors, which is quite rare. Nowadays, everyone is so siloed. It's rare to work in an environment like mine where at any given time, there's 2 or 3 very senior injectors, not 10 meters away, with an open door, a text or a WhatsApp away, or the doctor himself, our prescribing doctor, who's our resident cosmetic injector, literally down the hall, and he's, you know what I mean? Like, there's just access to support and help and leveling up all the time. So I think that's really appealing to people. It makes it easy for me to say, "Hey, have you ever thought about working with a crew?" It's actually really fun. It's not lonely. Somebody to bounce off, somebody to debrief, somebody to turn to when things get scary and you're the capillary refill, testing that refill, going, "Is it or isn't it? I'd love to get a second opinion." It's 9 o'clock at night. It's really lovely to have that team environment. So I think that draws people to me and to our business, in DMs and in conferences and things like that. So I'm a bit lucky in that sense. But I think probably the dirtiest poach I ever did was just seeing a really good operator get treated like crap. And I'm like, it doesn't have to be like this, just so you know. Just so you know, this is the green grass that exists. Just going to leave that here, leave that there, and leave that with you and see how you feel. And people deselect when they realize that there's other opportunities or better ways of living their life, because you've got to like what you do. It's horrible going to work when you're not happy.
Yeah. Any comments to protect your business from poaching, having managed 80 staff at one point?
Oh, it's more than that at one point. Gosh.
I don't know how you did that.
I mean, everything that Amy has said, I learned along the journey too, like the importance of one-on-one meetings, making sure you stay connected to people in your team, because by the time someone starts looking for another job or, has handed in their resignation, they're almost unsavable at that point. Like they've already, and so for me, it's around, I always I want to try and find the problem when it's like a 1% problem or before it's even a problem, and be proactive about it, because once someone's made that mental shift, it's very difficult to claw that back. And as Amy said, you're going to have different people that are driven by different things. Some people might want, more training opportunities. People want better working hours. They want more money. They want more time with their kids. So you're going to find different people have different motivational factors. And I think, for me, when I was running like 6 clinics and had the hospital and, I had so much stuff going on, I had to learn the hard way that, like, I need to make time for this. Otherwise, people won't always put their hand up that they're drowning or they're not happy. And you need to, it's like that, it's like checking, it's like, I keep sort of referring this back to like clinical stuff, because I know that's, who's listening, mostly clinical people, is that it's like doing like a vital check on a patient. You're checking pulse, you're checking oxygen sats, you're doing bloods, you're doing scans, because you need to be able to identify what's going on. And a business is a living, breathing entity, metaphorically.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's the same thing. You need to be checking in, because it's like spinning plates. It's like you're trying to do lots of things for different people, but it's just communication, and that's the hardest thing I had to learn, and I'm still, probably got a long way to go, even though I don't want to run clinics anymore, was being able to adapt my communication style, try to, being everything to everyone, being proactive, and trying to put out fires before they burn your house down.
But then you learn from every fire, right? So
You do, yeah. And then eventually, you when you're bringing on new people, they're going to fall into probably one of 2 categories. They're going to be an experienced person that's already got their way of doing things, and then you've got your newbie who knows nothing from nothing, and you're training from scratch. And I think there are pros and cons to each. How do you sort of view those differing types of candidates that might present themselves to you for an interview, or, driving you crazy to give them an opportunity. And yeah, and yeah, and just sort of to carry on with that question, trying to get people to unlearn things that you don't want them to do within your practice. So can you just maybe unpack that a little bit?
I think, yeah, I agree with what you said about pros and cons in both, because you might think, oh gosh, imagine taking on a green injector. I've got to spend all this money and time training them from scratch, and you're quite hands-on, and they require supervision, and there's a lot of investment in time and training and product and things like that go into them at the beginning. But the benefit of that is that there's no bad habits, and they really are going to like drink the Kool-Aid, I guess, and just do things your way. And if anything, you feel more with a junior, I'd feel more less of that fear that people fear, and more comfortable that behind closed doors they're going to do things the way I do, the way they were taught, with our protocols, our processes, because they literally don't know any other way. And that's something I say to my clients when I'm sort of back in the day when I was gently trying to hand clients over to the juniors or the new injectors. It was like, they have to do it my way because they don't know any other. They're all my techniques. They're all my assessments. So that's a reassuring point, because it's the brand, right? So you go there for an experience and you expect it to be consistent. And so in a sense, juniors are great in that sense, but you've just got that investment of time at the start. Taking on somebody who's intermediate is, it has its perks too, because they can hit the ground running a little sooner. They may bring a little client cohort with them, not always. I don't want them to, but so there's definitely less time investment in like getting them just doing the basics, but you will have to put a little bit more, I guess, structure in place, being like, give you the autonomy and the leeway here, and here, but at this, these are what's really core to the way we do it, and it is different to other clinics. I do think we do things a bit differently, in some sense, but before bringing an intermediate or an advanced injector in, part of the interview process and the screening and all of that kind of stuff, and in probation even, is really making sure they align with all of your values and your purpose and the way you do things and stuff like that, because they should want to join your team because they're keen to do it the way you do it and learn your ways and be one of you. If they want to come in and change things and do it their way, and I understand that, because if I went to work somebody else's business, I'd want all the autonomy, and if you try and tell me how to inject piss right off, I'd be, I'd never, take that, because you want to do it the way you know. But there needs to be an agreement when they come in and they're intermediate, that they see why you do it, they see it's valid, they see the value in it, and they're happy to jump on board and jump on the bus, if you know what I mean, and do it your way. So yeah, I guess less money involved in juniors, but probably more control, if you know what I mean. Whereas intermediate, you less fearful of like, adverse events or anything like that, because they've got that experience there. But then the challenges are more in making sure they're on brand and doing it the way you want to do it. So yeah, I think if I was to take anybody on at this point, I don't think I've got time for a junior in terms of all the onboarding they'd need, even with the help of my other crew. But I just have to make sure that the person was really, really aligned. Yeah, and really happy to do things the way we do it.
Speaking about brand, we've spoken a lot about clinical and training, etc. But how did you create the brand that you're running now? And what is the brand? How do you describe it?
My business is called Eltham Cosmetic Clinic, it's in a suburb called Eltham, and it's a cosmetic clinic. So it's super symbolic, really deep.
Good for
really,
the SEO.
Yeah, really symbolic meaning there. It took me ages to figure that out, but no. But basically wanted it to sound like an institution, because when I somewhat unceremoniously left the chain world, and it was all about credibility and sounding reputable and sounding established and trustworthy. So I didn't want to be like, come and see Amy's based by Ames, like that doesn't sound safe to me. I want these people to be like, this is a prestigious place. I feel safe here. I'm going to go there. But so I called it Eltham Cosmetic Clinic, and I'm just one of the nurses within this company. And it was a little bit of smoke and mirrors, but everybody says this when they start, but it's like, I was the marketer, I was the accounts department, I was the, so I always had, my email address was senior nurse Amy. So it's like, oh, there's tons of nurses, I just happen to be the senior one, or like, it's always like, contact us, we will get back to you. Thanks for getting in touch with us, the team here at Eltham, even when there's no team, because it sounds more established and sort of safe in that sense. So even when I was solo with no plan to not be solo, I think I had that in my mind. I was like, I need to sound like a crew and sort of safe and formidable in that sense. And best hack ever if you're flying solo is if somebody calls wanting you to pay an invoice, you go, person, the accounts department there, it's Thursday, they're not in till Tuesday, but I'll definitely email it to them. So you'll hear from them on Tuesday. And it's like, yeah, I bought myself another 4 days to pay that invoice. But yeah, I guess it was always Cosmetic Nurse Amy was who I was. It was my little Instagram that I had, when I was at all the other businesses. And that just sort of carries me through. And then Eltham Cosmetic Clinic was its own entity, sort of, and I just worked at it. And I think maybe a small part of me, even back then, thought that maybe one day I could sell it if it didn't have my name on it, which, incomprehensible back then to think it would have grown into what it is now. But yeah, it sort of just happened by accident. And then now I do have an accounts department and a creative director and there is admin team, practice manager, things like that. But yeah, just evolved, I think, over time.
Where to from here? I mean, you've built this incredible practice. I mean, you and I were talking a couple of weeks ago, and you gave me a pretty staggering statistic, which hopefully you're okay with me sharing, that you're only bringing in 5% or less, I think it was 4% of the total revenue that's coming in through your business. And a question that I get asked a lot as a business coach is, how do I sell this business? And for me, sitting on the sidelines and watching like huge transactions take place when laser clinics got sold twice, and actually having conversations at one point when our surgical business was potentially going down that path before the shit hit the fan. These people are always looking how they're going to exit the business before they buy it. So this whole concept of like key man risk or key man risk basically, which is that the person that's, the proprietor of the business is responsible for a huge amount of that income that's coming in. If they buy this business from you and you leave, then a huge amount of that revenue is just going to vanish. And that's a risk factor for them, which starts to make the business less of an attractive purchase or reduces the price that you may get because the risk is increased, right? So how have you kind of done that? Is it just been a process of just naturally going down that path? Because a lot of people that I talk to struggle with pulling back from the clinical side of things. They don't know how to do it. They feel nervous about, pushing patients over to other members of their team, or those patients are so entrenched with that, with them that they actually can't offload them. So can you talk to us a little bit about that strategy? Because 4% or 5% is mind blowing. And as you said, you do have an asset that is highly saleable because of the fact that it's so, unreliant on you as an income provider.
Thank God, it's good news to hear that from someone like yourself. But
I'm sure you already knew.
But it's like, it's good to be, I never realized it was so low until I actually looked at it. I was like, oh yeah, great. But I think, to answer your question, I had a really good business coach quite early on. I've always been really big on getting advice from people who know more than me. Like I said, I'm a nurse. There's no business in nursing. I don't get taught any of that stuff. So always taking advice from people who know more than me. A business coach said to me when I met this business coach in, I think, 2018, so my business had been going for 1 year and it was going gangbusters at that point. So I was doing, I reckon at one point, 50 to 60 treating hours a week. And I thought I was a rock star. My overheads were super low. It was like the lip era. And it was like, if I gave a shit, I'd probably buy, Gucci stuff. But the business coach was always like, you need to get out of the treating room. You need to get out of the room. You need to cut back your treating hours. And I was like, are you blind? Look at the figures. Like, if I have a day off, we lose money. It's stupid to suggest that. I hear it all the time from business owners, like, if I stop treating so much, there won't be as much money in the business. The clients won't like it. They'll miss me. They won't want to see the others, or they'll go somewhere else. Blah, blah, blah. I hear it all the time. I'm sure you do as well. She always said to me, you can't, and everybody's heard this, if you can't work on the business when you're working in the business, because you're on the tools. If I've got a needle in my hand and my gloves on, emails, phone calls, Zoom meetings, leveling up, reading books, listening to podcasts, talking to mentors, learning from my mistakes, getting my ass handed to me by my accountant or the ATO, learning things the hard way. All of that gets missed because you're just on the needle, taking the next one through, the next one through, the next one through, and then it's 8 o'clock. And to be honest, I don't care about all that stuff at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. I'm hungry, want to sit on the couch and eat and forget about the world. So getting out of the treatment room, getting off the tools and working on the business is 100% what happened. So I went from 6 days down to 5. And then she talked me into having a Wednesday off. So I was working Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturdays. And then we worked towards cutting back, here and there, trimmed it. And I started to trust what she was saying, because the more I stepped out of the treatment room, the more the business, it took off, and I thought short term there's a little bit of a dip because you're used to seeing your own little treating, income there, but building systems and processes, looking at revenue generating activities, looking at wastage and stuff that you're doing that's just dumb and just money that you're hemorrhaging unnecessarily. You don't notice that in the moment because you're just jumping into the next treatment. I'm already late, So looking at things like quickly put an express order on those cannulas. Well, you've just added $40 to your cannula order, which are already expensive. Slow down, get a system, order them before they run out, check that they're running out before, those systems can only be built and the wastage can only be avoided when you stop and step out and take the time to actually build them, which takes you away from treating clients. So understanding the true value in working on the business, not in it, all you're seeing is dollar signs and you're just going to be treading water and paddling upstream for the rest of your life. And I see people who've done it for like decades, and you would too. You're like, yes, it looks great. Look at all the stuff you've bought. You've done no evolution. It's completely reliant on you. If you go on holidays, it hemorrhages. And if you were to, heaven forbid, be unwell, it'd fall down the drain and it's not saleable. So, first of all, knowing it, deeply understanding, getting out of the treatment room, even if you drop a day or 2 or 3, work your way up. I mean, I still do a full day of treating on my Tuesdays. I'd see like 15 ladies on my Tuesdays, and these are my OGs, right, who I love, who've been with me for 10 years. I'm like, it's just a social day of catching up with old friends, basically. But I don't see any new clients. They go with my team. To answer your question, I think get out of the room so you can have a look at the business, grow it, build it, evolve it, assess it, see where there's gaps, see where the machine's breaking down, and put better systems in place. I promise you'll make more money anyway. But also, there's a reason. If you're feeling like, oh, my clients don't want to go with my team, or I don't want to lose clients, or I'm scared about what she'll do in that room, or I don't think that injector does things the way I do it, or well, I just know my clients and I know that they love me and I know how it would go if they were with one of them. That's on you to not put training in place, put processes in place in the nicest way, be auditing your team and the way they're operating and go, look, I'm going to be jumping in your room a little bit. I just want to see how you're doing things. I'm your mentor. I've been doing this longer than you. Let me give you some pointers to make you more successful. And then I'll be able to hand on a silver platter to you hot leads, my beautiful, primed, beloved clients who I know are wonderful and not problematic and happy, and you'll love treating them. And then your client base will grow because they'll refer more people to you, and off they go. So it's knowing that you have to get out of that room, get off the tools, get a good look at the business, work on it, not in it. But it's also training and trust in your team, because if you feel anything icky or funny in your body, oh, I don't know if I want that client to go in with that room with that person, that's on you. As the leader, you're 100%. Why? Why not? What is it that, is there a conversation you haven't had the balls to have yet? Is there a vibe that you don't know how to broach with them? Or if there's a treatment approach or a clinical decision, oh, I wouldn't have done that dose, or oh God, I don't know why she used that product. You look at their notes, you look at the client, you think, well, that's not what I would have done. You're in charge of that. You're responsible for that as the leader and the senior. You need to get in a one-on-one and be like, can we just chat about this for a sec? Because what I want to do is build you up, fill your columns, help you make more money, grow your clientele, grow your revenue, and grow your skill set so that you can thrive. And I want to hand you my beloved VIP clients. So I don't feel comfortable in, say, doing that until we've locked in exactly what you're going to be doing in that room. And, again, if they're junior, it would be a surprise if if they were raised with me. I'd be surprised if they were doing anything wacky in the room anyway. Taking control of that, having a good look at it. And a lot of this stuff is looking inside, right? Like, who you are is how you lead. It's the biggest personal development tool you'll ever find, is having a business. Second only, I think, to having a partner and having children. I think it makes you face your shit, makes you look at yourself and what you need to work on. If there's things that you need to work on, like, who am I to get out of the treatment room? Who am I to not be fully booked? Who am I to dictate how I'd like things to go behind closed doors with my team and my clients? Or, I don't want to be seen as lazy by the team. They'll think, why is she having days off? That was a big one of mine. I thought, oh, the team are going to think I'm off getting a pedicure, if I have a day off treating. No, girls, I'm sitting on my computer in a room for 10 hours, doing boring shit like BAS and, compliance matters, writing protocols, before ChatGPT. So, that was something that my business coach called me on. She's like, why do you think that? It's not, the girls don't think that, it's you. You're the problem there. So facing your shit, get out of your own way, get out of the room, get a good look at what's going on. And if you don't feel good about putting people in the room with your team, get some systems in place for training them, get some one-on-ones, get some clarity and some communication on what would make you feel really good about handing on a silver platter your beloveds, that you've earned for all those years. That would be my advice, I think.
Yeah, that's great. I want to just want to pin you down on what you say to your clients. How do you tell them that you're no longer going to be treating them, and how does that conversation go?
Very strategic. We did this when Montana, my first ever girl, joined me back in the day and grew up and came along. My advice to business owners who are looking to do this, and it's kind of costly, but I think it's worth it. It's about trust and familiarity and trusting in somebody's ability and skills and experience that they're going to be safe. So there's the social element. I love seeing Amy. I love catching up. I love hearing the latest goss from her. But then she's never done me wrong. My treatment consistently, my results are good, and I've never had an adverse event. So that's kind of, I think, what makes clients want to cling to you, because it's familiar and safe. So to build familiarity and safety, you need to start introducing them to the person you want to hand them to. So we almost like personality match people to that's why it's good to have a broad range of injectors in your stable, because there's somebody for everybody. Not everybody will love every injector. Not every client is a match for every type of person, right? So when I didn't have the choice back then, but when I just had Monty that I really wanted to start offloading clients to, she's in my room, she's helping me. The client comes in, "Hi, how you going? Coming in, David. This is my colleague Montana. She's got a gap in her bookings today. Is it okay with you if she just hangs out and watches? Because she's certainly not learning, but we do like to watch each other when we've got a bit of time and a bit of gap. Like I could jump in with Dr. Jake, when he's doing glabellas, and I could probably learn things, after 15 years, and vice versa. He might pick up a little tiny little anecdotal pearl if he watched me. So it's not junior and senior or mentor and inexperience. It's just creating an air of equality. Oh, no, she's not learning. She's just, if anything, she's auditing me. Ha ha ha. Make a bit of a thing of it. Monty will be there sort of listening, weighing in. And then I sort of say to Monty, is that what you would do? Is that the dose you would do? Oh, okay. Or, oh, you wouldn't. Oh, okay. Actually, you know what? Monty's right. Do you mind if we try it like this today? Because, yeah, she is really good she's such a lower face queen. She's so good at that. Yeah, good idea. I'm going to, let's try that today. Good idea, Monty. Or, I step out of the room on purpose, and the conversation is always, so are you learning? Like, if you've got somebody shadowing, as soon as you're out of the room, the client turns to the person, so are you learning? Are you training today? And no, I've been injecting for X number of years. We just really enjoy, Amy jumps in my room when she's got gaps, and I jump in her room, and we just see if we can learn off each other. The appointment finishes, client gets checked out, and the admin puts on that person's file Montana's initials. So the next time that person calls up to book in, because you can't book me online, if somebody calls up to book in with me, she's not free here. She's not free here. You know what though? Montana, who I think you might have met, she's actually got an availability right when you want to come. So just for this one time, and then you can go back to seeing Amy just because you've got an event on and sounds like you really want to get in. I'll pop you with Monty. Amy will do a handover. Montana's got all your notes that are really thoroughly documented. Amy and Monty can just touch base before you come in, and Monty will be able to do your treatment this time and then book back in with Amy after. So it doesn't sound like I'm see you later and you can never come back. It's like Monty or nothing. And then on my life, they won't come back to me. I won't see them again because they're so impressed with her. She doesn't run late like I do. She's efficient. She's everything they need them to be, and she's available when, way more available than me, way more efficient than me. And they just don't have a reason to want to come back to me. And then we just gradually did that with every person, to the point where they're like, Monty was just so familiar. It just felt like an extension of me. And it takes time. I mean, that sounds like probably a laborious way to hand over a client, but you're talking about clients with a potential lifetime value of $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. So it's worth spending 4 hours of wages on having that person in the room who you'd like to hand those clients to. It's a small investment if you think about retaining them and just maintaining that standard of service in the brand. Like, how elite does it sound if you say, oh, we're going to perform a handover and discuss your file before you see Dr. Jake for your glabella? I mean, we all know a glabella. I mean, I'm pretty sure Dr. Jake's going to be able to do a glabella. But the clients to think, oh, wow, okay, I do feel safe. He's different, but they've talked about it and I'm going to be okay. And it's just like building that sort of trust. And yeah, that's kind of how we did it. And the same thing when they go on maternity leave, there's a whole strategy around telling the client in the room, I'm pregnant, I'm going to leave at this time. Let's book you 2 appointments with me, 2 with another, and then, or when I'm off, and then 1 back with me right before Christmas when I'm planning on coming back. It's very strategic. There's none of this. My injector's on maternity leave. Who should I see? Because you'll lose them that way. My friend goes to one down the road and then they'll never come back.
That's great.
Smart. Yeah, I like that.
Very clever.
Yeah, I mean, no customer or patient wants to just meet someone new on the day. So I like the fact that you've sort of wheeled them in slowly. They've met, and if there's a big clash for whatever reason, you'll know before the day of the booking, and you would never book them together. So yeah, it's smart.
Yeah. And I like what you said around, different personalities within your team. And this is something that I learned as well as like a sports team. Not everyone's a striker, not everyone's a goalkeeper. You're going to have like some high performing people, like your stars that burn really bright, but sometimes those people can be more time consuming to manage. There's a bit more volatility around them. Then you've got your slow and steady people. They're always consistent. They don't cause any issues. So yeah, I think it's good to have those. Having too many of the same people can create like sort of cultural issues within
We
business.
try and almost personality match. Like they say your vibe attracts your tribe, so you'll see those injectors with, they themselves have got really big lips and big cheeks and, loud techno music in the room while you're treating. And they've got a bunch of clients who love that and look like that themselves, and they'll just go to them. But I'm lucky that I've got in my stable now, I've got like, I've got beautiful Megan, who's, she looks to me like she should have been a children's entertainer. Like she's got, she could be like Cinderella at the Disney, she's like, "Hi, how you going? Oh, come on in. Don't worry. Oh, it's going to be wonderful." Really gentle, beautiful nature, very conservative doses, very minimal, very, very, gradual in that sense. And so if our practice manager or the girls in admin here on the phone that they're super nervous, makes, I'll book you in with Megan. You'll love it. Or if they sound themselves a bit like that kind of person. Somebody calls up and they're like, "Hey, going, yep, don't have a lot of time. Really need to get in. My wife comes here. I just want to get my lines done." Yep, cool. Great. Dr. Michael will look after you. He's really efficient. He's really on time. He's very to the point. Men enjoy seeing men. I don't, say what you will. A lot of our male clients love seeing Dr. Michael in and out. No worries, mate. No fluff, and off you go. And putting that client with Megan, he'd be like, "Oh, she's nice, but God, fluff's around. I'd like to get back in my car and get back to work," or, everybody wants something different, and you'll never please everybody, but you've just got to try and find your tribe and personality match them a little bit.
You've obviously explained how your staff and maybe vibe is different, but how have you differentiated the services or just what you're offering your customers so it feels different and fresh? There's so many clinics around now, and everyone or many patients have had a sort of the chain experience and they're looking for something different. So what have you done?
I think it's the time that you take and the length of the consult. A boring answer, but it does come back to the client experience and really having that as, first and foremost, front and center. And that, as you guys know, client experience starts from the minute they walk in the door, the way the place looks, the way it feels, the way they're greeted, the way they're treated, even the wording of their confirmation texts and the wording and the look of the emails that they get with information before they come in. Like, it starts there. So I spent a lot of time and money refining that and drilling into walk the steps a client would through your business and exactly how it would feel. If it's your brand voice, is it a template? Is it personal? I think you can really differentiate yourself in, the way it feels to come. But also, I think a point of difference that clients often comment on our clinic is just the level of care, I think, and the power of saying no. I mean, you guys have covered that many times, but saying no when somebody comes in with something that they think they want or they think they need, and we say, actually, no, you build massive trust by doing that. And then you get lots of referrals from doing that. So, a little bit of a point of difference to our clients, I think, is what would feel like extra care, where if you go there, they're not going to swindle you. They're going to be really honest. They've got your best interest at heart. They're not after what's in your wallet. So I guess just really hammering, because at the end of the day, you can go to a chain clinic without an appointment in an hour and get a glabella. And if you just don't get a ptosis, you've got your glabella done, just for simply the absence of an adverse event, you could really get a treatment anywhere. But where would you where you have to book in. You can't just walk in. You've got to drive. They're not as available as a chain clinic that you can wander into. There's lots of reasons that we've put obstacles in hurdles in coming to our clinic over there. But what makes it feel worthwhile is that extra care, the safety, the security, the really visible training, really visible education, always putting on blast on Instagram and in emails to the database, training, conferences, presentations, masterclasses, webinars, in services. Like, we are constantly training our team. And I guess those little points differentiate you over somebody who appears to not really be upskilling as well. So I guess an edge. But really client journey at the end of the day, because there's nothing new under the sun. I mean, as long as you're being safe, we're all doing very, very similar treatments, as you know.
So maybe we could summarize it as an experience over a transaction.
Just feeling like we've got a lot of psychology built into our consults around like eye contact, keeping your lips together when someone's explaining something, even if it's really annoying and draining and obvious, or they're telling that story about how they had that crappy experience, and where the story's going to get to, but just let them say it. Little psychological things where they feel deeply heard. That's a point of difference. They say, "Oh, the other clinic didn't listen to me," or "Nobody took the time to explain that to me," or "No one's ever," alarmingly, they say, "No one's ever told me about the risk of a blood vessel getting blocked." And I was like, "That's terrifying because you've had your lips done 10 times, but now you know." So, just thoroughness, I think, can be a point of difference.
Yeah. And I think sometimes as well, even though that patient may have been told that they could have a risk of a blood vessel being blocked, they didn't hear it because the communication channels weren't opened, which gets back to what you were talking about with rapport, being able to make that patient feel comfortable and allowing those communication channels to flow freely so they actually are hearing. The amount of times I've spoken to people who go, "Oh, my patients don't listen to me," or, I was told that I came in for tear troughs and I got sold my cheeks. I felt like I was upsold too. And it's all around communication. Like, they weren't actually explained. They didn't have things explained to them correctly. The rapport wasn't established. And then it's like you're talking words onto a wall. It's actually not getting into that person's brain because you haven't established the relationship.
Sure. Or just set it in a language that they understand, I think, which is why I'm so passionate about, templating consults and things like that, because it just saves you having to reinvent the wheel and tell the story anew. You just read from your script and you'll never miss a beat, basically. And
I think sometimes people don't like the idea of script. They feel like, oh, this becomes very mechanical. And if I think back to my days in sales training, like many, many years ago, we had to learn these scripts because you needed to understand all the marks that you needed to hit, and there was a process in place. But once you've done enough repetition, then the structure or the skeletal frame of what you've developed is still there, but then you develop your own personality. You're not going to be saying exactly the same words as the person in the room next to you, but you're still, the underlying structure is still the same, but you've decorated it with your own personality. And you need to do that repetition first, though.
for sure. And it's when you're tired, you can miss points. If I've said the same consult 5 times, man, you're not getting the best of me. The girl that got me at 10 a.m. got a better consult than the person at 5 p.m. But we have a consult template that we use, and within reason, the girls can go into Canva and reorder the slides. If they're like, "Oh, it feels like for me it flows better like this," or "This leads more into this point," I'm like, "Great, babe, change it however it flows for you. It's your consult." But if you just don't have those points, you could miss them. And there's such value in building rapport and that communication channel with clients if you're like 2 steps ahead. So like, if you do 1 million consults and everyone says, "Oh, but does it hurt?" Maybe answer that before they even say it, and they'll be like, "Oh, she knew." Or like, when you're doing a glabella, when you're injecting the glabella and you do the little brow tails superficially, we all know that they hurt more often than the center one. So you're like, little scratch, da 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 da. But when you get to that tail one, you go, "This one hurts a little bit more," boop, and they go, "Oh, you're right, it did." And it's like, God, Amy must have done so many of these. She just knew. She's so experienced. I'm so safe. But building those little checkpoints in, I know clients feel safe in. A new injector might not realize. Build it into the consult, and they won't miss it. And then they get the brownie points for looking really practiced and experienced. So building it into everything.
Yeah, I often say to new injectors, each time you encounter something that didn't go quite right, write it down on a sticky note or whatever, and then build that into your next interaction. So you've anticipated it already. And like you said, by the time you've done it 100 times, you're just saying it like auto repeat, and you just look more experienced because you are experienced and you've learned from it.
Preempting, because you're like, oh, before you ask this and before you ask that, and it's in our consent form, and it's like, and you can't go camping because that happened one time, and don't do a sauna because that happened one time and it was bad, and it's like all of your burn marks, hard-earned like things. You just learn your lessons and get in before you have to do it again.
What's next for you? Like, is there an exit on the horizon? I'm sure your staff don't want to ever hear that you're potentially going to leave, but at some point there is another chapter. So what does the future look like for you?
Definitely one day, I think the business will be handed to even bigger, more capable hands than mine. I think it'll get to a point where I've grown the baby as big as I can, and I've got to hand it on to somebody bigger and better than me who could take it to the next level. I think that's probably a few years off, and there's so much legs in the business still and so much untapped opportunities that I want to do. So introducing like a hormone branch of the business where we can look after that, after having a meeting with an industry advisor, I've, looking into those things yourself, into introducing those sort of avenues into the business, starting like a little not-for-profit around domestic violence, because we have such an opportunity to reach women who are in those situations and, impact their the outcomes of their decisions and their next steps, which I'm going to implement this year, hopefully. I want to do more, keynote speaking. I want to build out, some training portals and things like that, and just keep building the community. What I wish there was more of when I started was actual legitimate community, not nasty screenshotting and reporting to APRA community, but genuinely helpful friends in the industry, kind of like what you guys have created with the Patreon, and especially the WhatsApp group. So just I want to just keep fighting the good fight, I guess, to build community, not competition, and help upskill and support other people, other business owners, who are just in my same situation. So just more of that. I think that's what's on the horizon.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for the shout out for Patreon. If you are listening and interested, the link is down below in the podcast description.
Yeah. I mean, Amy, we could sit here all day. I mean, I love these conversations, and it's been nice for you to sit here and listen to all the great things that you're doing. I hear a lot of what you're saying, sort of reflected in my own thoughts and things I've learned along the way. So it's always nice to hear those things reaffirmed from someone that's, so successful. So congratulations for what you've been able to do. It's amazing. I don't come across many people that have sort of built businesses to the level that you have, and got such a, an acute awareness of things outside of just clinical practice. So, kudos to you, and thank you for being so generous with your time and your knowledge.
Yeah, I echo that, and thank you also for providing some content for our Patreon, which was awesome. Yep. So again, if you want to check it out, we've got a 7-day free trial. You can watch Amy's sort of consultation process and how she does it in her clinic. So it'd be great to see you. I haven't seen you in years in real life. So give us a sort of a teaser. Who would you like to teach for? You said you might want to do the KOL kind of stuff. So do you do it already?
Whatever reaches business owners, maybe so Geltimo girl, anything around that. I'd love to just business owners and people who are in the infancy of their business or afraid to take the next step or feeling a bit lost. So probably like business events and things like that, or creating events myself one day, where I can get people together and create, even more sort of forums and support in that sense. So yeah.
No, we really appreciate it. It's been very enlightening, and thank you for being so generous with your knowledge, Amy. We appreciate
Thank you. It's been wonderful.
Thanks, Amy.
See you later.
Thank you.
For our latest news, follow us on Instagram at Inside Aesthetics Podcast. If you want to get in touch with myself or David, follow us on Instagram as well at Dr. Jake Sloan and David_Inside Aesthetics.
Join our Patreon for invaluable business and injectable education. Get access to our global community of like-minded professionals, live and interactive Zoom sessions, hints and tip videos, webinars, and more. Head over to www.insideaesthetics.com/Patreon for more information.